تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار صدق الله العظيم. Honorable professors, respected brothers, elders, we commence by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending the choicest salutations and blessings upon Muhammad ibn Abdullah, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, his family, his household, his companions, and all of those who follow him till the day of judgment. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Now, subhanallah, Sheikh Ibrahim has set the bar so high that I was just telling him that maybe I should just make the dua and we should end the program right now. MashaAllah, he covered very many points, and if you wrote that, or whoever was writing, or MashaAllah, you have a very good memory, you remember, please keep in mind these things, and inshallah we go forward propagating and practicing. Barakallahu feekum. Now, I've been given the task of speaking about Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahimahullah. Now, I want to divide this program into two parts, inshallah. First, we need to understand the selection of these two personalities. Why were these two chosen? And this comes from the importance of Palestine. We need to understand the importance of Palestine. And secondly, to understand who this personality was. So, the reason these two personalities specifically were chosen, the program is themed Tales of Aqsa, the Tales of Aqsa. These two individuals specifically were chosen because they were the liberators of Aqsa 400 years apart. So there was a time when Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu warda, the great companion of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, as Sheikh Ibrahim mentioned, marched into Palestine, taking turns simultaneously with him and his slave Aslam riding, you know, the mule, and then he's riding, his feet are covered in mud, hair is disheveled, he's wearing clothes with patches, and he comes and he is given the reins and the keys, and at that occasion he says the timeless words, نحن قوم أعزنا الله بالإسلام لو نبحث العزة بغيره أذلنا الله. He said those timeless words, and they ring much louder today. He says, we are a nation, Allah granted respect through the deen of Islam. If we look for this respect anywhere else, Allah will disgrace us. So the problem is that now I've left, I thought of my way to be inferior, right? So I was born and raised in the West, and then when I travel to the East, the Eastern Hemisphere, and I see the youngsters trying to be like those pop stars and celebrities on TV or whatever you're watching, and you want to walk or talk or act like them. How dare you sell something which is superior for something that is inferior? Problem is we haven't appreciated the value. So he said these timeless words, and then 400 years later, the great Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahimahullah, he also conquered Palestine. So what is Palestine to the Muslims? Allah says in the Quran, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-haram ila al-masjid al-aqsa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, glory be to that being who took his slave, meaning the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from Masjid al-Haram to Masjid al-Aqsa. This was the great journey of Isra and Mi'raj. Isra from going from Mecca to Masjid al-Aqsa, Palestine, and then going from Palestine to the heavens. This was Mi'raj. So this great journey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala records in the Quran, right? You know, when the Muslims came to Palestine, when they came to Medinatul Munawwara for 17 odd months, the Qibla of the Muslims was Baytul Maqdis, was Palestine, was Masjid al-Aqsa. And there is an entire intricate bahath. You know, if you study the intricate commentaries of Sahih al-Bukhari, and when you come across the أول قبلة المسلمين, the bahath, or the discussion under the first Qibla of the Muslimin, the Prophet ﷺ used to pray his salah, used to pray in a way in Mecca that he would stand adjacent in a manner that he would face the Kaaba, and he would also face Masjid al-Aqsa. So he would stand towards the side of the Kaaba, that he is praying towards the Kaaba, and at the same time he is praying towards Masjid al-Aqsa. The common belief is that he was praying primarily towards the Kaaba, and then he was adding Baytul Maqdis there, meaning the Tahweel al-Qibla happened twice. If this opinion is adopted, the tahweel al-qibla. I didn't intend to talk about this, but this will benefit you academically, inshallah. Tahweel al-qibla means the switching of the qibla. So then when he went to Medina, the qibla was changed from the Kaaba, then to Bayt al-Maqdis, 17 months later, back from Bayt al-Maqdis to the Kaaba. But this isn't the case. What does that mean? That the Prophet ﷺ, even when in Makkah, he would pray facing Bayt al-Maqdis, but it was just possible for him to stand in a manner where the Kaaba would come in between. But the Qibla was primarily Bayt al-Maqdis, and you can read this in the commentaries. This is a common opinion. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah has also spoken about. Nevertheless, coming back to the point of discussion, Bayt al-Maqdis, the importance of Palestine in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ was taken from Makkah al-Mukarramah to Masjid al-Aqsa before being taken to the heavens. And this journey was to give the Prophet ﷺ this consolidation. His wife, Khadija radiallahu anha, passed away, Amul Huzn, the year of grief and sorrow. His uncle Abu Talib passed away. It was tremendous pain. They were boycotted from Makkah. During this juncture, he went to Ta'if to see if he can make that the hub for Islam. He was pelted, subhanAllah, when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam went to Ta'if, and these people pelted him. Ibn Kathir rahimahullah says, for an entire mile, children from the streets of Banu Thaqif were the leaders of Ta'if. They're pelting him and they're throwing pebbles and rocks at him. Just subhanAllah, I say to myself, how can I ever possibly feel the spirit of Islam standing here on a nice stage, enjoying AC, having some nice, food? But when these people would sleep, the sky is their fush, the sky is their blanket, the earth is their fush. And they were people who lived for the Akhirah. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was pelted. He's with Zayd bin Haritha. Finally, Zayd bin Haritha takes him. His shoes are clogged with blood. He can't take his shoes off because it's sticking, because the profuse blood that was flowing from his body. And then he made that dua under the tree. Allahumma ilayka ashku dha'fa quwwati. He raised his hands. If you can understand the words of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma ilayka ashku dha'fa quwwati wa qillata hilati. وهواني على الناس يا أرحم الراحمين أنت رب المستضعفين وأنت ربي إلى من تكلني إلى بعد يتجهمني أم إلى عدو ملكته أمري إن لم يكن بك علي غضب فلا أبالي ولكن عافيتك هي أوسع لي أعوذ بنور وجهك الذي أشرقت له الظلمات وصلح عليه أمر الدنيا والآخرة من أن تنزل بي غضبك أو يحل بي سخطك لك عتبى حتى ترضى ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بك. Sheikh Ibrahim went over 15 minutes and they were showing him all these signs. So if I continue like this, they're going to really drag me off the stage. So I don't translate. Maybe tomorrow, inshallah, for those who come. Allahumma ilayka ashku dha'fa quwwati. Allah, to you I complain. Allah, to you, innama ashku bathi wa huzni ila Allah. When Yaqub lost his son, alayhi salatu wassalam, وَبْيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ, cried profusely, he loses his eyes. And then he says, when everyone said, Dad, you're gonna go crazy crying for your son Yusuf, he's gone, forget about it, move on. Innama, I only complain to Allah. Ashku bathi wa huzni ila Allah. How many people, wallahi al-azim, how many people, we don't know what they go through, only Allah knows the pain. When the doors close and when the lights are off, when the cameras aren't there and nobody's posting on social media and it's not trending, each man and woman has their own pain they go through. So no one needs to be judgmental. No one needs to be judgmental of anyone because, again, ultimately it's judgment by Allah. I was in Oman 2 months ago and there was this one sheikh whose house I stayed with this sheikh for 3 days. I accompanied him, a blind sheikh, elderly. So over there, mashallah, a lot of students are learning and reading and mashallah, a lot of great things were taking place. At the end of my 3-day trip, there was this one student, or not a student, there's one worker, khadim. There was one worker there, he was of Bangladeshi origin. And at the end, I spoke with him when I was leaving. And when he started telling me or narrating his story to me, he told me he's been there for about 7 years. He doesn't go home every year. I said, I've only been in Malaysia for how long? And I said, I'm missing home. I'm even missing the cold and the snow in Canada, right? I thought I would never miss it, but subhanAllah, it's ajib how, coming out here and when you're away from your homeland, this is when I can just a little bit. This is what kind of people we are of faith. Nevertheless, my apologies. I want to be inclusive. We don't know which point is going to hit where, inshallah, so I'm going to add multiple things, but inshallah stay with the subject at hand, which is Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahimahullah. So Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahimahullah, now I was mentioning the importance of Palestine. Just very briefly, Palestine is very important because it was the first Kaaba. Hundreds of prophets are buried there. It has a very great legacy and tradition in Islam. Much can be said. It is part of the three harams, and it suffices to the honor of Masjid al-Aqsa, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, لا تشد الرحال إلا لإحدى ثلاثة مساجد مسجد الحرام مسجد هذا أو مسجد الأقصى أو كما قال. That you should not travel except to three of these masajid, Masjid al-Haram, Masjid al-Nabawi, or Masjid al-Aqsa. So from the three harams. So this shows the importance of Masjid al-Aqsa. Now coming to Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahimahullah. After the leadership, or after the conquest of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu for 400 odd years, Masjid al-Aqsa, Palestine, was in the rule and the leadership of the Muslims. The Muslims were the caretakers and the leaders of Palestine. Now, as Islam was spreading throughout Europe, it was flourishing. The Europeans, the Christians, they started to fear regarding their religion. So they waged something called a crusade, a holy war. You know, this ransack about jihad, right? And people have made this a very disgusting word. And text of hadith. So we're not saying the fanaticism and extremism that's taking place. Obviously, we deny that. But to be overly apologetic and to deny the word totally, this is absolutely false. So the Europeans, you know, the ones who are accusing the Muslims today, they should have a look in their own history and realize they had something called a crusade in the holy wars. They waged against the Muslims and the Jewish communities specifically, and we'll see the comparison as to how the Muslims dealt with them during jihad and how they dealt with the Muslims during the crusade. Inshallah, we will see a comparison of this. So they started waging these crusades. Nevertheless, the year 1099, this is when the Masjid al-Aqsa, or the premises of Palestine, the Holy Lands, fell from the hands of the Muslims and went to the Europeans, went to the Christians, the Crusaders. When they came into Palestine and it was conquered, 1099, this was the year, they ransacked the place in a single day. They killed 70,000 people in the courts, in the premises of Masjid al-Aqsa. 70,000, and this is not just the historical accounts of the Muslims. You see what Ibn al-Athir rahimahullah wrote. I'm talking about what the Western writers have written. This is in their accounts. This is in their books. They killed the Muslims to an extent that the streets of Palestine were flowing with blood. The ankles of the horses on which they were riding were covered with blood. How much blood has to be spilled for literally be rivers or streams of blood be flowing in the streets? No child was left except snatched from the breast of the mother and smashed. These people, when I say they were barbaric and animalistic, they defined this word. They gave definition to this word. A child was snatched from the breast of the mother and smashed to the wall. No woman was left except she was dishonored. This is what happened when the Crusaders came into. إن الملوك إذا دخلوا قرية أفسدوها وجعلوا أعزة أهلها أذلة وكذلك يفعلون. The Quran says that when these people come and they take over lands and they conquer lands, this is what they do. They kill, they pillage. All is fair in love and war. And that's where the saying and the axiom comes from. This is what they did to the Muslims. Now this falls into the hands of the Crusaders. Some time passes. There was a man who was born to a family. This man's name was Yusuf, who was later known as Salahuddin. He was born to his father's name was Najmuddin. Najmuddin, he was in a place known as Tikrit, the fort of Tikrit. Now he was the caretaker of the fort of Tikrit, and because of certain issues, he was made to leave. He was banished. He was banished from Tikrit. And the reason he was banished is because his brother Sheikh, and these names are going to be a little tricky, but just try to remember so you can fit the whole puzzle together. Sheikh, who was the brother of Najmuddin. Najmuddin is the father of Salahuddin. Sheikh killed a guard because of dishonoring a woman. because he wrongfully advanced towards a woman. So Sheikh who killed this man, political push and pull. Ultimately, Najmuddin is banned from the fort of Tikrit. So now they are leaving. The historians record that Salahuddin rahimahullah was born the same night his father was banished from Tikrit. Now they're leaving Tikrit. Where to go? They travel to Sham, Syria. They go to Damascus, Dimishq. They go to Damascus. And in Damascus, there was a man by the name of Imaduddin. And Imaduddin will come to his son Nuruddin. Imaduddin Zenki and Nuruddin Zenki, rahimahumullah. Amazing people. So Imaduddin Zenki, rahimahullah, he had Nuruddin, Najmuddin was the father of Salahuddin, had done a favor for Imaduddin. Too many deens, it gets confusing. But just remember, right? Najmuddin, Salahuddin, okay? Imaduddin, Nuruddin. So father, son, father, son. So there was a point in time where Najmuddin, Imaduddin, he needed a favor, and Najmuddin did this favor for him. So remembering this favor, they traveled back to Damascus, wherein Imaduddin was the ruler, was the king. So he welcomed them with open arms, and he gave them amnesty, and he gave them love and affection. And subhanAllah, look, there are sometimes things that happen in life which you think they may not be for the good. So his dad was totally devastated on being kicked out of Tikrit, the fort of Tikrit. But going there was the reason why Salahuddin became Salahuddin. Till the end of his life, he will attribute his success to Nuruddin Zenki rahimahullah. Imaduddin and Nuruddin Zenki rahimahullah, these two are the founders of the madrasa system. These people loved ilm and ulama. These people loved knowledge and loved the scholars. They were the founders of the entire madrasa system. And Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahimahullah was a byproduct of the madrasa system. He loved ilm and he loved the ulama. He became a hafiz of the Quran and he memorized an entire matan of the Shafi'i fiqh. So he loved the scholars and he loved knowledge. رضينا قسمة الجبار فينا لنا علم وللجهال مال فإن المال يفنى عن قريب والعلم باق لا يزال. Ali radiallahu anhu would say, رضينا قسمة الجبار فينا. We are happy by the decree of Allah amongst us. لنا علم وللجهال مال. For us is knowledge, for the ignorant is wealth. Why? He says, فإن المال يفنى عن قريب. Wealth, as much as you use it, it depletes. Knowledge, as much as you use it, it increases. And there's a whole list of things he draws a dichotomy. He says that wealth you have to protect, and knowledge will protect you. And see, the thing is, a lot of students are, aspiring for a certain degree to ultimately get a job, to ultimately have this, extensive or large livelihood. Historically, wealth was never tied with education or knowledge. You should seek knowledge, A, for yourself, 2, to propagate, to become an upright human being, because ilm is something that's going to give you light. Now with ilm, there needs to be other things, because ilm in and of itself will make a person arrogant. Right? There are 3 levels of knowledge a person enters. The first one, if he enters shallow, he becomes arrogant. He thinks he knows all. I'm the one, I'm the man, nobody knows more than me. He enters a second realm of knowledge, he becomes humble. He says, okay, wait, I know, but I have to be humble. But the third ultimate realm of knowledge is that you realize you just know a drop in the ocean. Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, a giant, he would say, كُلَّمَا زِدْتُ عِلْمًا عَنْ جَهْلِي. Every time I increased in knowledge, I just increased in knowledge about my ignorance. I only became more aware of how little I know. Right? The poet complains about this dichotomy of wealth not being attributed to knowledge or money. He says, كَمْ عَاقِلٍ عَاقِلٍ أَعْيَتْ مَذَاهِبُهُ وَجَاهِلٍ جَاهِلٍ تَلْقَاهُ مَرْزُوقًا هَذَا الَّذِي تَرَكَ الْأَوْهَامَ حَائِرَةً وَصَيَّرَ الْعَالِمَ النِّحْرِيرَ زِنْدِيقًا. Inshallah, we'll translate that tomorrow. So whoever wants to hear the translation can come tomorrow. Was also in the hands of the Shia, and that's what was taught. He made the call that from tomorrow, Misr will be Sunni, as it is till this day, And from tomorrow, and he established a Maliki madrasa, a Shafi'i madrasa, and also made Al-Azhar into a Sunni school. No two people had a problem because he won people's hearts. This is a lesson for everyone. You want to create or do something, you will need to win the hearts of people first before trying to come and change by force. You need to win people's hearts. You need to be a man who follows his action. You know, Ali radiallahu anhu, this is how people of our history were. When Ali radiallahu anhu, during that time of the assassination of Uthman radiallahu anhu, given the leadership, he climbs the pulpit. Right? We're having 2-3 hour lectures. I enjoy talking, you enjoy hearing. We go home, everything's out the window. Tomorrow I have a hard time waking up for Fajr. This is what's sad. Ali radiallahu anhu climbs the pulpit. He says, people, ayyuhan nas, O people, you people are not in need. He says, you are in need of a person. La qawwal bal fa'al. You are not in need. This is an inaugural statement. This is an inaugural speech. You are not in need of a person who just talks. You're in need of a person who does. You are in need of a person of action. Allah says about these rijalun, these were men. لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله. No wealth, no tijara, no status, nothing ever distracted them from the remembrance of Allah. وإقام الصلاة, from establishing prayer. وإيتاء الزكاة, and from discharging their zakah. يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار, and they were cautious of that day they're going to stand in front of Allah. We have become people of just mere words. We need to become people of action, my brothers and sisters. I enjoy, this is a reality that needs to hit me first, and then it needs to hit you. We enjoy, we can sound pious, we can look pious, we can do all of these things above. But we need to be people of material. We need to become people of essence. And this is who they were. This is who these people were, that this many years later we name our children Salahuddin and Umar. It was their legacies. So now he's given that leadership. Now many things happen. I want to run through it very quickly. He was a very generous man. The Mu'arrikhin write that he was سَخِيٌّ جَوَّالٌ لَمْ يَمْنَعْ فَقِيرًا قَدْتُ وَلَا يَرْكَبْ فَرَسًا إِلَّا نَوَى بِصَدَقَتِهِ. Whenever he would ride a horse, he would never mount the horse except he would already intend to give it in sadaqah. SubhanAllah. The box is coming around. Dear respected brothers and sisters, I don't know what organization it's going to, so I don't vouch for that. But inshallah, the research has been done, and whoever it's going directly to the people in need, we should open our hearts and donate. We should open our hearts and donate. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless every single one of you who have donated. Never would ride a horse except, you know, the one who has recorded. And I'm going through this because if you want an extensive biography of this man, Dr. Ali Salabi has a 3-volume book. He's written very extensively about him. Other than that, the thing is, everybody claimed him. The Western historians wrote tremendous amounts about this man because everybody wanted to claim who he was. Everybody wanted to claim. There were rumors in Europe saying that Salahuddin actually, because the Europeans couldn't believe his bravery, they said that, wait, actually there was a princess who was taken captive to those lands because he was a Kurd. He was Kurdish. She was taken to those lands, and he is the son of that woman. Because he has that bloodline, he's so brave and he's so upright. That's what the Europeans were claiming. The Arabs, they couldn't believe that a non-Arab was so upright, was so righteous, and was so brave. So they would trace his lineage back to Adnan. Reality is he was a Kurdish man who was not restricted by the backward borders of nationalism. He was a man Kurdish by nationality, but wallahi al-azim, head to toe, he was a Muslim first. Me, being from Indian background, let's say, if something happens to the Muslims there, I will be perturbed more so if it happens to Muslims elsewhere. Why? When Muslims are going through flood in Bangladesh, they are more affected by those people than the Muslims across the globe. Right? Why is the Palestinian struggle not my struggle? Why is what happened in Bosnia and Algeria not my concern? This needs to bring a tear in our eyes and a crack in our voice, because these were Muslims done. Color, race, language, this is just to recognize. أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. This, beyond this, we all bleed red. We all bleed red. So he was a man upright and amazing. So I'm just going to run you through just basic. So I was saying Ibn Shaddad. Ibn Shaddad was a man who accompanied him and wrote a very extensive biography about him. He watched him, and Ibn Shaddad records these things. So Ibn Shaddad said this man was so generous that once he told me that, hey Ibn Shaddad, do you know there are people in this world, to them, dust and wealth are the same thing. And he said that I know he wasn't referring to himself, but I knew by my heart that he was specifically talking about himself. This was a man, he was never, when Adi died, he had a palace so massive, it had 4,000 rooms. 12,000 women would stay in that palace. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahimahullah divided that entire palace for his subordinates. This was a man who lived in a tent and lived on the battlefield. Just imagine. Honestly, by heart, if I offered, or if somebody offered me $5,000, that's pushing it, 1,000. Hopefully 1,000. I would say we've gone as weak as $100 or ringgits. And I tell you, brother, just miss, or sister, just miss one salah. Just skip one salah. Sheikh, give me 5, I'll skip 5 of them. Salah. These people were people of action. These people were people of material, wealth, prosperity. You know, the pomp and the glamour, the green and the riches of this world never distracted them. They were people, they knew they had a destination, they had an abode, they had a grave to sleep in. They had an Allah to be answerable to. So ultimately he stays in Egypt, and Salahuddin rahimahullah spent about 10 years. Now time is of the essence. He spent 10 years just fighting Muslims. I won't go into details, but 10 years he spent just fighting the Muslims. Because at the time, all of the caliphs, all of the khulafa, all of the leaders and the rulers, these were people all sold out. These were people, to secure their political power, they would team with the crusaders, and they would assist and aid the crusaders. So 10 years he spent just fighting the Muslims, because he knew that until we are not united, we will never, we will never conquer the sacred lands. So 10 years he just spent fighting them. Nuruddin rahimahullah, Zinki rahimahullah, he ultimately passed away. Now from all of this, now when he passed away, he has the leadership of Syria. Ultimately he had the leadership of Egypt, Syria, Palestine. Huge demographic and geographic amount of land he was the leader of. Now what I want to make mention of over here, that as he was growing, young man, charismatic, Allah's doing all of these things, conquering left, right and center. These other caliphs are fearing for their positions. So they now team up with the crusaders, and what they do is they release a man named, now you may have heard this name, his name was Reynald de Chatillon. Reynald de Chatillon, remember this name, this was an accursed man, Reynald de Chatillon. He was in prison 15 years in Halb, in Aleppo. In Halb, these people released him to be a prick in the side of Salahuddin rahimahullah. This man is released. As soon as he musters up an army, he marches directly towards Makkah Mukarramah. Al-Ayyubi billah wal-Ayyubi billah min dhalik. He says, after I knock down the Kaaba, I will then walk to Madinatul Munawwara, wal-Ayyubi billah wal-Ayyubi billah. I will uproot the blessed body of the Prophet ﷺ, bring it back to my palace in Kark, and I will charge the Muslims to come see the body of Muhammad ﷺ. When Salahuddin rahimahullah heard this, he lifted his sword in the sky, and he made a qasam that by Allah, I will personally kill this man. Nevertheless, time goes, he sends an army. He doesn't even go personally to defeat him in the holy lands of Makkah and Medina. He sends Najmuddin al-Lu'lu. He sent Najmuddin al-Lu'lu, he is defeated. Ultimately, the men, they disperse. Now, unwillingly, there's ultimately a truce between the Crusaders, between the Muslims. 4 years go by. I'm going to run you through it quickly. 4 years go by. The same guy, Reynald de Chatillon, breaks his oath, breaks his covenant with the Muslims, and there was a caravan traveling, because caravans used to travel from Syria to Egypt. This was a traveling route. He ambushed an entire caravan, took their goods as booty, and killed the believers. As soon as Salahuddin rahimahullah heard about this himself personally, he raised his sword to the sky and he said, the Muslims, wallahi al-azim, weren't people drawn by numbers. كَم مِّن فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَثِيرَةً بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. There were 313 on Badr, but these were people of essence. These were people of material. And 1,000 armed from head to toe, no tooth showing except they were armored. These people stood no chance. 1.8 billion, 1.56 billion today. What can we do? You can't agree to do that. Sheikh, no way, this is difference of opinion. No, it's like this, or it's like that. And 1.5 billion. So, Battle of Hittin, they're very little, but Allah blessed him with tactical mindset, and he grew up. His father, Najmuddin, Imaduddin, Nuruddin, these were all top tactical folks. And as they grew up, every child's dream was to ultimately, liberate the lands, the holy lands. And this is all the talk was. Allah blessed them an amazing military mind. So, Muslims are few in number. They ultimately, very cleverly, they do this. Those people march hundreds of thousands. Salahuddin rahimahullah would say, he said that we wouldn't kill one except in their position 100 more would come. And he would write extensively. He was impressed by the unity of the disbelievers. Al-kufru millatun wahida. He was so impressed by them that they are sending retaliation and they are sending in reinforcement from all directions. He would write to the Muslims, to the believers, the leaders in the time. Nobody would send anything. Nevertheless, Allah wanted to open this, the Holy Lands at His hand. Inshallah, 2 minutes. Inshallah. So, what he does, Battle of Hittin. Battle of Hittin, they're in that position, they're in there. The army comes, ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants them victory. Raymond de Chatillon, he is brought with another 13 kings and princes. They are all brought. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahimahullah, upright man. Now we are getting to the climax and the crux of this. Now what he does is he gives them water to drink. He gives them all water to drink except for Raymond de Chatillon. He doesn't give him water. Because in the Arab custom, or in the custom of the Muslims, the Muslims of the time, is when you give someone water or food or something to drink or eat, you have given this person amnesty. So he gives them all water except Reynold. This person saves a little bit of water, gives it to Reynold. He says, look, you've given him the water, I haven't given him the water. Then he speaks to Reynold. And he says to him, look, I present to you, either you become become a Muslim, or either I kill you. So this person said, I won't accept Islam. And then Salahuddin rahimahullah started counting. He said, it doesn't befit a king to kill a king. But you have done this and this and this, and you have transgressed. And he named all of the wrongs he does. He then fulfills that qasam he made twice that many years ago, strikes the neck of Reynold, and he separates his head. And this is in their text. He was a powerful, a dangerous man, but Allah manifested this glory at the hands of Salahuddin. It was like when Ibn Mas'ud rahimahullah, detached the head of Abu Jahl. Right? Abu Jahl is in the throes of death. Ibn Mas'ud climbs on top, a skinny, scrawny man. And he, even in that situation, look at the arrogance and pride. He said that could not another noble man have killed me. And they say his head was so big. Allahu a'lam about this. But Ibn Mas'ud, when he was sitting on top of him, when he severed his head from his body, he had a hard time even picking that head up. This is how massive of a man he was, Abu Jahl. But again, people of essence. Ibn Mas'ud, he was standing one time on a tree. Wind blew, his shins are showing. Sahaba look at it, they start laughing. Man, look at his shins. They start laughing. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, look at his shins, Ya Rasulullah, they're like toothpicks. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, by Allah, you place the shins of Ibn Mas'ud on one side of the scale. You place the mountain of Uhud on the other side of the scale. And the shins of Ibn Mas'ud will be heavier than even the mountain of Uhud. Why? Because these shins stood in qiyam. These shins strived in the path of Allah. So coming back, the Battle of Hittin, this is how it ends. Now ultimately 2 days later, whatever's remaining of the army, Salahuddin rahimahullah, he takes the army out, and they take down Nablus, they take down all of the other forts so that the reinforcement doesn't come. And this was all the 20th of Rajab. 6 days, they attack. Now they are ultimately around. They took all the ports, so no reinforcement. They are attacking, pounding away at the Holy Lands to break in, to break through. There's a siege, they're attacking. 6 entire days. After 6 days, the great thing finally happened. After 88 years of misery, when the Muslims lost the noble or the sacred lands of Palestine, finally on the 27th of Rajab, the same day when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was taken for Isra and Mi'raj, the same day Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came from Mecca to Palestine, that same day, the 27th of Rajab, Salahuddin rahimahullah marches with his army into Palestine, into the sacred lands. And the Mu'arrikhin write that in that morning, everybody prayed Salatul Fajr in their tents. And every single Imam recited the same verse. يا قوم ادخلوا الأرض المقدسة التي كتب الله لكم ولا ترتدوا على أدباركم فتنقلبوا خاسرين. If you can understand that verse, it's in Surah Ma'idah. It's about the people of Musa alayhi salam. Oh my people, enter into this blessed land. Enter into this blessed land. 27th of Rajab is when it was conquered. I just mentioned this main crux, the point, and then we close inshallah. 88 years ago, this was in the Hijri 583. 88 years ago when those Crusaders, they conquered, as I mentioned, they conquered in a way where they killed, there was pillage, there was rape, there was murder, there was mutilation. The same man, imagine as he walks into the streets of Palestine, when he sees the women of the Christians, he is reminded what was done with their women. When he sees the little children playing, he was reminded that our children, their heads were bashed onto the wall. When he walks the same streets, he is reminded all of this they did with us 88 years ago. Today is the time of retribution. Today is the time for vengeance. But his vision was set on something much greater. And he was remembering the great conquest of Makkah as the Prophet ﷺ, when they marched with an army of 10,000. And in this joy, in this passion, one Sahabi shouted, Al-Yawmu Yawmul Malhama. Today is the day of bloodshed, of killing. You know, today we will give them back what they did to us. Nabi ﷺ looked at him and said, no. Al-Yawmu Yawmul Marhama. Al-Yawmu Yawmul Marham. Today is the day of mercy. Today is the day of compassion. He forgives them all. He sets them free. It's a lengthy tale. Salahuddin rahimahullah does the exact same thing. He stipulates that everyone can leave. Doesn't kill. He stipulates only 10 dinar for the men, 5 dinar for the women, 2 dinar for the children. People pay. Who cannot pay, he says, go to the back end of the entire city. They go to the back end. They say, now he says to them, you can all go free. His brother Aqil asks for 1,000 men. He's given 1,000 men. He frees them on the spot. He says that, okay, you will see my generosity. He sets them all free. Sees a man taking his elderly parents. He brings them, unable to pay, says you can go without paying. He sees they're in the situation. He gives them money. He says, look, this is what you can spend as you go. Then he sends his own men that go with them along the way, along the route, so they are not harmed, and send them or place them in the spot they would like to be outside of these holy lands. This was the same place 88 years ago. This is what they did. The Western historians, the Europeans, write that Salahuddin taught the Europeans, taught the Christians compassion. He taught them mercy. He taught them love. This was our legacy, my dear respected brothers, elders, mothers, and sisters. So we need to remember the rijal. We need to remember the men and women who sacrificed so much for me and you to say the kalima. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ultimately, the death of Salahuddin rahimahullah came a few years later. 2 years he spent in the battlefield combating against them, because he feared, look, if we leave, if we conquer and we leave, ultimately the Muslims are so weak and they are so disunited, we will lose this ultimately. He stays outside in the battlefield 2 years fighting. Ultimately he goes to visit the Hujjaj, it's cold, he becomes sick, nears his death, he's in the tent. He says that as he grew weaker, I can see his iman got stronger. He said, Ibn Shaddad said, I was watching him, we recited Quran in front of him for three entire days. Even in this situation, he said, he did not leave Salat with Jama'ah. He was a man very punctual with Salat al-Jama'ah. He was passing away. Here he's sick. He's sick, unable to go to the masjid. The Imam comes, leads him in prayer. This wasn't a man who's living adjacent to the Masjid al-Jami'. He wasn't a man, he had a muhalla and he had a musalla inside. He was a man on the battlefield, and he doesn't miss a salah with Jama'ah. So he's passing away, he gets feeble. He hears the verse of the Quran, he says, Sadaqta. Ultimately, he hears the verse, he says, recites the same verse, and then he says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And he goes from this world, my dear respected brothers and elders, mothers and sisters. The lesson for me and you is, there were many leaders in his time. No one remembers. It is my responsibility and your responsibility. When Salahuddin came to this world, he was a crying toddler and everyone around him was laughing. When he left and departed this world, he was the one smiling and laughing, and everyone around him mourned and cried. Let us live such a life and leave such a legacy that when we too go, we go with a smile on our faces and everyone around us is crying. Amin ya Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.